Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen. It's an engaging and enlightening talk show on life, relationships, and the business of life. Grab a cup of juice and just chill. Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen. Live life. Live fully.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode. We really appreciate you joining us. This podcast really shows us how we can all learn, live, and thrive off of each other. By sharing our knowledge through our conversations, we will impart some knowledge whilst learning ourselves how to progress even further. Here is your host.
Omobola Stephen on Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen. Now, Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen is a self-improvement and personal development podcast which focuses on topics under personal development and self-improvement. Self-improvement and also personal development is a lifelong process that we all must continually embrace in order for us to go from where we have to where we need to be. It's really a constant work that we need to do, but it's what the effort at the end of the day. And which brings to on today's show, I have a great guest who is going to be talking about nervous system coach, especially talking about leadership and also personal development. Now we have Sangheetha Parthasarathy, who is a nervous system coach, speaker, and consultant on the show. Hi, Sangheetha. Welcome once again to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, and it's so lovely to be here.
So lovely to have you once again. I'm looking forward to a great time because your area of expertise is such a topic that my audience would like to get to know much about. So I'm looking forward to a great time once again. You are a nervous system coach, and I remember talking about nervous system. That was in my biology class when the lecturer was talking about the human body. And so how do you serve your clients with your expertise?
Thank you. Yeah, that's an interesting question. And similar to yourself, when you hear neuroscience or neurobiology or, nervous system, we usually think anatomy, doctors, etc. And so, what's been amazing for me in this journey is to actually, be continuously fascinated about how much of it is actually real life. What I mean by that is nervous system is not just some brain scan, our nervous systems. So our autonomic nervous system. So we have different parts of our nervous system. Autonomic nervous system is largely that autonomic, which means that it is beyond, it is not in the realm of conscious thought. And thank God for that, because imagine if your brain had to continuously tell your body to breathe, that would be very exhausting for the body. It's just something that the body does. Similarly, sleep, hunger, excretion, breathing, and heart rate, like heart beating, it just does it all on its own, automatically. We don't actually consciously say, breathe now, or beat fast now. And so when you think about the body and the human brain, it's extraordinary that most of the way in which our neurology or our functions are wired, 80% of it is body to brain. So 80% of our wiring is constantly and consistently passing messages about safety or unsafety, or how does the environment feel like and to the brain. And then only 20% is the brain to the body, right? And I think what's unfortunate is that in the realm of personal development and self-improvement, those fields traditionally and historically have been very body phobic. What I mean by that is there has been an extraordinary preoccupation with the brain. And one of the things that we think about is that the brain is somehow separate or distinct from the body. Therefore, we can think our way out of, trauma or patterns or eating or speaking. While that's true to a certain extent, what we're missing is also that there is a whole autonomic bodily process that is driving and pushing us towards acting in ways that we need to bring conscious awareness to. And I found that fascinating. So I've done a lot of personal development and self-improvement work myself over the years. But when it came to my interpersonal relationships, partner or children, and through birth, what I would find first as a mom of two, through my own births, but also in my work as a doula, is that while we would do our conscious preparation and birth rehearsals and positive energy and all of that in the birth room, a lot of times the stored trauma patterns in the body as unconscious and implicit memories would show up in the birth room. And I needed a language and a methodology to work with that. Therefore, I became a somatic experiencing practitioner and an early attachment focused coach, because I was working with birth anyway. So a lot of my work is very rooted in pre and perinatal, very, very early attachment. Therefore, it was a very natural progress for me to layer on somatic experiencing to it and offer it to my clients as a nervous system coach.
All right. Sangheeta, in your own words, and I quote, most of what we learn as trauma is not culturally appropriate or strength-based. Now, we talk about trauma as something that is we all are discussing at this moment of our time, especially in this era of change. Trauma is part of us, it's part of life. What led you to this conclusion?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that's a very, very important piece that gets overlooked. So I am very, very grateful for all of my teachers, and experts and mentors that have held space as I have learned my skills as a trauma renegotiation, practitioner, and an early attachment-based practitioner. And as you do this work, what you realize is that, especially I'm a brown woman. I'm British Asian or British Indian, as you call it, and I have lived all over the world, and we're currently based out of Chennai, where I live with my husband and daughters. And when my clientele is very diverse and very global. So when you start working with trauma and when you start working with the nervous system, what you very quickly realize is that a big piece of trauma, especially early attachment trauma, also has systemic and cultural roots. What I mean by that is, if a child is raised in a culture or an environment where physical distance or where the child is touch-starved, then that has a significant impact on how the child's neurology grows. Similarly, if a child is raised and gestated, for example, where there was a lot of immediate threat of actually survival, right? Like refugee or real economic or even physical, unsafety or survival necessity, then that impacts that child in a particular way. This is what we talk about in trauma. Okay, we talk about, however, what we're missing is a big piece, and this is why the context is key to safety, right? What we oftentimes miss and what oftentimes gets lost in translation is the cultural translation layer. And what I mean by that is, every culture, as it has toxic elements and triggers and trauma and systemic issues and power abuses and all of that, there are also a lot of gifts and resilience and somatic practices that historically have helped a culture heal and find resilience. So this is why I'm saying that there is a very important and urgent need to reframe and layer more lenses on what we think of as trauma, to be not just culturally humble or appropriate, but actually to, decolonize it and actually start looking at it in, hypercultural lenses in a very strengths-based way. What I mean by that is a lot of resilience triggers. So just as we have triggers, we also have glimmers, which are bodily experiences of feeling safe and feeling connected and feeling resourced, feeling resilient, that sometimes just gets overlooked when we look at trauma through a singular lens. So that's what I mean when I say a lot of what we think of as trauma education in general and the field of trauma, the way we talk about trauma is not culturally informed. And so my work is very strengths-based, where we bring in culturally appropriate resources based on what's available to that client, which is a very personalized way to work with each client.
All right. Now, this is a very deep topic of discussion. I know that time will not permit us to delve much into trauma. Thank you for that. And now you keep emphasizing on the line early attachment, right? And so what has power got to do with early attachment? And also, why do we need to empower leaders in this information? I like to emphasize leaders. Why should they be leaders?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think this is like super duper important. And I think, as I was telling you earlier, my clientele is made up of global leaders, predominantly women, first generation, from the global majority, maybe lives in, the global minority, or entrepreneurs like yourself, right? This is the super important bit. And so when they come to me, they have invested in, talk therapy. They've invested in life coaches, executive coaches, gravitas coaches, ally sponsors in the workplace, you name it. The missing piece there is the actual nervous system piece and how we hold power. And this is so very important for leaders, because when you become a leader, and I mean leader not in a corporate money-making sense, when you become a parent, for example, you are the leader of your household, or, I mean a position of where there is power for you to hold. This can be very triggering for many of us who grew up in early attachment environments that may not have engendered a basic level of security and safety and trust. Another way to say it is, if we grew up in early attachment environments where there was a lot of chaos or inconsistency in attunement and mirroring and presence, so when we come into the world, our nervous systems are very crudely developed, I'll say that, right? So the part of our nervous system called the ventral vagal complex, which is responsible for pretty much everything in the body, in terms of feeling safe, in terms of metabolism, in terms of emotional regulation, in terms of bodily regulatory functions, right? It's responsible for so much. The only way that part of that tree in the nervous system can grow is by so we don't have that when we have very primitive version of that when we're born. Therefore, we need a secure set of caregivers with enough buffer to co-regulate with us. So what I mean is, when a baby comes into the world, we have no ability to regulate anything, okay? We can't control our bowel movement, we can't control our emotions, we can't control hunger, etc., right? Therefore, there is no self-soothing that's available to children for a very long time. And so therefore, it's mandatory that they have an adult with a very well-regulated nervous system And their mirror neurons fire off of this adult or set of adults for a long time before they can build that ability by themselves. What happens is a lot of us, economic anxiety, especially in the global south or the global majority, where we have moved from urbanization. It's the first generation probably, or the second generation, where mothers worked outside the home and there was a lot going, and family systems changing, the proverbial village, losing some of that. There are so many economic anxiety. So much happens in the setup, which prevents that from happening the way it should. And this is not to blame, shame anybody, right? It's not about that. I'm saying that when that happens, the way we hold it affects the way we think about our needs, the way we think about our existence, the way we think about belonging and autonomy and who you are as an individual. So how we hold power is a very, very early imprint for us. And when a child is raised or grows up in environments that feel unsafe, for whatever reason, nobody's fault, right? Then the child has very few options, right? Because fight, response, flight, freeze, right? We can't fight with adults, right? They're just bigger. We can't run away from home, you'll be found and brought back, right? So the child can freeze, and what I mean, so there are lots of, this is verbal and narrative ways, right? But I'm talking about even in utero. When a baby is in utero, what was the mother's environment like? Was it safe? Was she loved? Was it a wanted pregnancy? Was there unsafety? When there's unsafety around, there's a way in which we hold our bodies that really doesn't. So I'm talking about early attachment as a bodily function and as movement and cellular patterns, as opposed to actually verbal narratives, right? So what we think of as attachment is predominantly non-verbal. At a very, very early age. And it starts in utero. It starts with the way that an embryo actually buries into the womb and how it holds itself, right? Because as we're developing in axis and planes, etc. Right? So I'm talking about some very, very primitive ways in which we attach and hold power. So when we have power wounding, even at that age, just nervous system wise, we are going to see a nervous system that is predominantly wired for survival rather than thriving. So when a nervous system is wired for survival, we're hyper aroused, hyper vigilant, waiting for one shoe to drop all the time, defensive, finds it hard to trust, etc. Then when we layer personal development or self-improvement on it, we're missing that big foundational piece there about power, about early attachment, about what stories our body is carrying about power. For example, you might carry your body might carry a story around being very ambivalent around power. Because if I have power, then I must be an aggressor, like a bad person, like a perpetrator, So, or it might carry a story where if I don't have power, then there's a lot of shame associated with it, and I don't deserve to exist, but a lot of these are found as patterns of how we show up and how we hold power, and then when we bring power wounding into our leadership, then we're so used to seeing power as binaries, like a perpetrator and a victim, and sometimes a savior, and then we find ourselves switching between these binaries, none of which is a sign of a resilient nervous system. And therefore the work, especially for female leaders of color, is to reckon with this power wounds and transform it in the body. Therefore, we get more confident about holding power without these binaries, in a way that feels nourishing and enough, So that's a big piece of what I do in my signature program.
Oh, thank you, Sangheetha, for that insight. Still talking about leadership and attachment, I'd like us to move also, bringing nervous system to what we want to say now. Why is the nervous system? Why is it the missing link that can create high performance leaders or teams? I'd like you to shed more light on this.
Yes. So a big part, and see, what we're seeing today is that more women of color than ever are getting into boardrooms, which is amazing, and I love it. What is important? Yes, we need more, right? But I think what systemically we've done is we've missed that. I think as companies and organizations, we're so focused on our D&I efforts to get women people of color into the boardrooms that we're sort of like, we got them there and it's like phew. But the work begins after you get them there. It's like, what happens after that? I think that's very, very important. And that is what differentiates between, legacy creators as leaders. Like, what do you want your legacy to be versus, she got there and then what? And I think this is why it is extremely crucial for all of us, all leaders, to work on their attachment systems and rewire the attachment system for safety and connection. Because when we do that, we're able to lead with nourishment and empathy in a cooperative. There is enough power for all of us to hold and go around versus looking at power as binaries. Therefore, if somebody else is more powerful, then it takes away from me. So, it's competition, winner take all, traditionally patriarchal, ways in which we're taught to look at, capitalist patriarchy and how we hold power. And I feel like getting more women of color is the key to potentially rewire organizations for this thing called psychological safety. And again, I speak about this as well. I think psychological safety is a very lagging indicator of organizational or leadership safety. We have to talk about neurological safety, or neuroception, which is this autonomic, unconscious, body to body, is my body safe with you or not? An example of this is you came online, right? So my social engagement nervous system and yours looked at each other, and within, the first few milliseconds, the body has already told you whether I'm a safe person to be in conversation with or not. And as I'm having this conversation with you, you are listening to my words. However, your body, your autonomic nervous system is noticing the pitch of my voice, the pace at which I talk, my eyes, my lips, my face, and it is sending you minute by minute information as to whether it is safe to continue being in conversation with me. So if I had said something or done something that your body perceived as unsafe, immediately your defenses are going up, right? And then this conversation would be very, very different. So that's what I mean by we talk about psychological safety, but I think that's a very lagging indicator. We should be focusing on neuroception of safety, that the unconscious autonomic, minute by minute perception of safety, because that is when we can really overlay the cultural and the trauma elements of it. What women and people of color want or need to create legacy in the boardroom needs that shift in how we are co-creating teams for neurocepting safety, not just psychological safety.
Oh, now, Sangheetha, why did you say that we need women of color to handle this shift? Why should it be women of color? Should it be for everybody?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, what I'm saying is when we get into the boardroom, I didn't mean that they have to do extra work. I just meant that when we have diversity in the boardroom, it kickstarts a lot of changes in the way we've traditionally done things. And I think that's amazing. Just by, for example, it's small things, but it's big. Everything is significant. For example, ordering chairs, right? chairs are, you custom buy chairs, and that is, I don't know, if like in meeting rooms in, America or the UK, you will see chairs that are measured for the tall white man. It's not really for a 5'2" petite Asian woman like me, and it starts from there. What I mean by that is, the more diversity of thought or action or nervous systems that we have in the boardroom, then how we work together as a team and how we communicate also has to change, and that's a good thing.
All right. Talking about somatic healing, which is also your area of expertise. And Sangheeta, we got a profound discussion on this nervous system, right? I know that time cannot just permit us to, have this conversation. I hope that some other time we can do this. So we want to talk about trauma patterns. What is the role of trauma, somatic healing in helping to process trauma? You have an expertise in this regard. Can you share your insights?
Yes, absolutely. So, first of all, what is trauma? Before I came into this work, I used to think that trauma is this emergency room, and somebody has a traumatic head injury or whatever. That's what we think of as trauma, right? But trauma is anything that is too much, too soon, not enough for the nervous system, without the presence of an empathetic other to repair it or to process it, So and there are broadly, two types of trauma. One is shock trauma, which is accident trauma. I fell down from a moving car, and, so there is a residual trauma pattern in my body. For example, I was driving a car and I got into a little bit of an accident. So I'm gun shy and I can't get back into the car again. And every time I go into the car, my hands are shivering and my feet are getting sweaty. I had a traumatic birth. And so anytime I drive past that hospital, my heart starts racing, my hands are sweaty. I don't want to go anywhere near that road. Every time I'm parked at that signal, my body is replaying traumatic memories. Now, this is shock trauma, which is sort of like a single incident trauma, right? Like something happened and you have residual body feelings, body-based sensations from it. This is why trauma is different from stress, and trauma is different from anxiety or depression, because what we think of as trauma always has a psychosomatic component. What I mean by that is, it gets stored in the body as sensations, images, a lot of implicit, stories in the body, right? What happens generally is, if you have a moderate level of trauma or stress, sometimes in 6 weeks, the brain, with enough safety, etc., sometimes that can just go away. Like, so the next time you're driving a car after an accident, you might be a bit panicky, and then maybe that charge might go down on its own. But a lot of times, if it doesn't, then we do the work, we help. My child recently fell off a car, which is going at not a big speed, but it was, unexpected, etc. So I work with her to somatically sequence the neural motor movements that she couldn't complete back then due to shock, So I do that with my daughters, and one of my older one, we were swimming and she had a near drowning, for a few minutes, she thought she was drowning and she had trauma from that. And, so those are what I work with somatically, is to restore the neuromotor and the sensory sequence that could not be completed in the body back then. But now, after that incident is over, and in the feeling of safety in the therapist's office, we actually sequence that. Therefore, the body can restore optimal function, right? So this is in the realm of what you call shock trauma. Developmental trauma is early childhood attachment deficit. So now we're in the realm of attachment, like I said, Was I liked? Was I loved? Did I have parents that I loved very, very much, but also were scary to me, hitting, yelling, abusive households, etc. And the earlier it happens, adverse childhood experiences, then the more deeper impact it has on multiple areas of our life. So that is developmental trauma. So I work with that also. A big part of whenever we work, the body comes up with what it comes up, but complex post-traumatic stress, working with that is still at the body level, because how it's different from normal talk therapy or normal talk coaching is when we recount traumatic or stressful incidents without the somatic work, then the trauma pathways get very deep in the brain. So instead of you saying it happened sometime else, your body is replaying it as if it's happening to you in the here and now. It's like the body is saying you're in danger in the present time, because we lose the ability to differentiate between something that happened in the past versus what's happening now. Okay. So when we work somatically, then we help the neural motor, we help the body rewire and process things in an atmosphere of safety. Therefore, the bodily activation or trigger is not so high all the time, right? For example, if you have a trigger, it might send a client directly into freeze or dissociation, like, then I don't know what's happening, etc. Or, like this example that I said, if it was a scary event, then your heart can race, your hands can sweat, and you might be shivering, and you might want, all of that, right? So we help you, the body, complete those movements now in an atmosphere of safety. Therefore, we restore resilience and functioning, so that's what I do.
Right. Do you have any projects, any exciting news you like to share with my audience?
Projects, exciting news. Let's see. Content-wise, we're doing very exciting things. Like I have my own podcast called Nerve to Lead, with some very exciting episodes. That's one. So anybody that wants more information, go to Nerve to Lead. They're on all platforms. Content-wise, you go to my website, and we've created lots of videos, and because it's so new and people want to know more, there's tons of free resources. My YouTube channel, my podcast, my website, blogs and written content. LinkedIn, I share things on newsletters. So there are some very exciting things happening on the content front. So anyone that wants to consume more of it, then you have all of these things to look forward to.
All right, we look forward to that. Can you share your website so we can get to know more about that?
Yes. So I'm on www.sangparth.com. So sangparth.com. So if you Google Sangparth, or if you Google nervous system coach, you'll see me on the first page. So.
Awesome. Any parting word?
No, I think it's amazing what you're doing. And for anyone that's listening to it, I would say, this is what I wish somebody had told me back then, is that you're not different, you're not broken. Your trauma patterns and triggers are not necessarily within your cognitive, realm, but help is, the trauma was not your fault, but the healing can be under your, responsibility. Therefore, if you're, desirous of showing up different, if you know things cognitively in all of these realms, like personal development, self-improvement, couples, intimacy, parenting, if you're somebody that like me, that reads a lot and knows all of this cognitively, and would still come up against, triggers during either parenting or, partnership, etc., then the nervous system might be a missing piece to it. So it's not your fault necessarily. It's trauma and the impact that it has on your body, and healing is absolutely possible. And if any of this excites you, then reach out to me.
Absolutely. Thank you for the motivation, Sangheetha Parthasarathy, for your time and for sharing your thoughts on today's topic of discussion. I wish you the best of luck in all the projects that you embark upon.
You're very welcome, and you too.
All right. Okay, so if you'd like to catch up any missed episodes of the show, you can do so on any cross-promotion platforms or any podcast distribution platforms you bump into online. And just search for Omobola Stephen, then here you go. Do have a great time listening to experts share their thoughts on personal development topics. You'd like to get to know much about Omobola Stephen, you can check me on my website, www.omobolastephen.com. Now, if you also like to be a guest sharing profound and disruptive insights on personal development and self-improvement topics, you can send a mail to me at omobolastephen.o@outlook.com. I'll be looking forward to your mail. We can have a great shoot together and be the change the world is waiting for. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.